I left home 9 years ago because of limited opportunities.
And it's been a total privilege to be living in the United States. But Lebanon will always be home. And I've always had hope for my country. But recently, something happened that reinvigorated my hope. You may have heard, Lebanon could be oil rich. It's not confirmed yet, but there's a good chance we could have large oil and gas deposits under our sea and our land. Wow. This means our economy would grow. We would have money to build our infrastructure, to resolve our electricity crisis, to create jobs, and jobs not only in the oil industry, but in all other industries. This could change the fate of our country. I could move back home. Many Lebanese could move back home. So I started researching what happens when a country becomes oil rich. And this is when I learned that what gave me hope could turn into a nightmare. 81 countries in the world have their economies driven by natural resources like oil and gas. Looking at their experiences, I learned that if Lebanon mismanages its oil and gas resources, it could end up worse off and poorer than what it is today. This is what happened in Sierra Leone, Angola, Nigeria, and many other countries. Experts call this the oil curse, and there are 4 risks an oil-rich country could face. The first is the environmental curse. And we all remember the catastrophic oil spill that happened in the United States a few years back in the Gulf of Mexico. If an oil spill happened off the shore of Lebanon, it would be devastating for our marine ecosystem, our beaches, and tourism. There's no room for mistake when it comes to environmental preservation. The second is the war curse. And historically, there's been many wars fought over who owns oil and gas. There could be civil wars internal to the country. This is what happened in Sudan for more than 22 years. And there could also be wars fought across borders between neighboring countries. Imagine, oil and gas is found in the sea area between Lebanon, Israel, and Cyprus. And Cyprus is divided between the Turkish and European part. This could escalate into a regional war that would be unwanted by everyone. Let me tell you something. We have had enough of wars in this country. The third risk is the economic curse. And there are many factors that could lead to macroeconomic crisis. A recent example is what happened in Ghana in 2007 when they discovered oil. And people got really excited, and politicians felt under pressure to perform. So they doubled public sector salaries and spent money they didn't have. Oil money didn't start flowing in until 4 years later. And by then, Ghana went from being the rising star of Africa to be suffering from a fiscal crisis. In Lebanon, we need to manage expectations as well. We can't get ahead of ourselves. So we will not actually know how oil-rich we are before we start drilling. Well, the fourth risk is the scariest one of them all. It's the political curse. And this is King Egi. He's a tribal leader in Nigeria, and his beautiful reception room is financed from money by oil companies. We all know that corruption is endemic in Lebanon, but can you even imagine more corruption? Our democracy would be undermined at a much deeper level than what it is today. So what does this all mean? Our environment, our security, our economy, and our democracy could be at risk. All the fundamental problems that we are facing today in our country could get much, much worse. It could be the drop of oil that breaks my country's back. But it doesn't have to be that way. we can do something about it. We can avoid these curses. We can avoid these risks. We can benefit from these resources. And this is because experts learn from the experiences of other countries which failed and succeeded in managing their resources. And they came up with lessons that could be applied to the case of Lebanon on how to avoid these curses and fight corruption and turn these finite resources into a renewable wealth that would benefit all citizens and future generations. But these lessons are relatively recent, and very few countries have had the luxury to apply them early on when they first started building their industry. We are lucky in Lebanon. We have an advanced warning and a chance to intervene that very few others have. So why don't we take this chance? And I know there's a lot of things to do and it will be hard, but if there's one thing we all need to focus on right now, it is to focus on the most dangerous issue of all, corruption. So let's walk through it together. How can we prevent corruption in the oil and gas industry? And I know we're numb to corruption in this country. But corruption in oil and gas is not like corruption in other sectors. The United Nations estimates $5 billion are lost to corruption every year in Lebanon across all sectors. If we do have large oil and gas deposits, we are talking about tens and hundreds of billions of dollars that could be at risk. This is grand corruption. This is a lot of your money that could disappear from under your feet. So let's think through, how do we fight it? And in order to do this, we need to understand, how could corruption happen across the oil and gas industry? And it's a complex industry, but we can think about it in 5 simple steps. You choose the companies that are going to build your industry. You drill. You produce the oil and gas. You sell it. And then you manage and invest the money you made. So when the government chooses the companies that are going to build your oil and gas industry, how do you know they are not owned by politicians? And here, the devil is in the details. So the government has a condition that if international oil companies want to come and do business here, they have to partner and subcontract with local companies. These local companies are the ones that could be owned by politicians or their relatives. In Brazil today, there's a massive corruption scandal ongoing that's involving not only the oil company, but subcontracted construction companies, which funnel back $20 billion to political parties. 34 politicians are under investigation right now. So to prevent this type of corruption in Lebanon, we need to ensure that we have laws that uncover the real owners of all companies involved in the oil sector, including subcontractors. Then once you selected the companies, drilling starts. And here the questions we need to ask is, where is the oil and gas located? If it's in the sea, this is less of a problem. But if it is in our land, and there could be oil in our land, this is a detrimental question we need to ask. Imagine there is oil in your land, and the government comes and expropriates your land and underpays you for it. To avoid this, we need to make sure that the law maintains every citizen's mineral rights and every citizen's fair share of oil profits. And once you start producing oil, we need to know how much is being produced. This is very important because in Iraq and in Nigeria, 40 to 50% of the oil produced is illegally smuggled and sold into the black market. It's very easy to do when us citizens don't even know how much oil is being produced and not even aware that fraud is happening in the first place. So to avoid this, we need to make sure we monitor and disclose how much oil is being extracted and make it mandatory by law. And then once you sell the oil, how much is it being sold for? In the 1980s in Alaska, oil companies overestimated their cost by just a few pennies. But multiplying these pennies with millions of barrels, these oil companies increased their profits enormously. And the point here is that corruption doesn't need to happen only at the level of government or local companies. It can also happen at the level of international oil companies. We need to monitor them as well. And then you get to the last step in the industry once the money starts flowing into the government treasury. And here, we need to ask, how will this money be spent? A mind-blowing example is what happened in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In 2008, they exported $1 billion worth of resources, but the government treasury only received $30,000. Let me repeat that. $1 billion exported, $30,000 went to the government treasury. We need to make sure this does not happen in our country. So in order to avoid corruption in the oil sector, we need to make sure we have laws that ensure transparency and help us avoid all these problems at each step of the industry. If you want this natural wealth to benefit you, to benefit all of us, there are two things you can do. Get informed on the topic and ask questions. And there are many resources available to you, including the work of an NGO experts and I founded called the Lebanese Oil and Gas Initiative. And we are building a global network of petroleum experts from around the world, whether they're economists, engineers, geologists, or lawyers, and they will inform you on what is going on and lobby the government to pass the right laws. And then the second thing you can do is support the transparency initiatives we're going to be launching so that we can actually pass these laws and enforce them. We need to do this. We need to do this because these oil and gas resources are not for politicians. They're not for oil companies. They're not for a religious sect over another, a region over another. These oil and gas resources are yours. They belong to every single Lebanese citizen. And I'm choosing to give this talk today, not in 5 years or 10 years, because the backbone of the industry is being built right now. These laws and contracts that are going to be signed are going to be locked for decades to come. Our future is being decided for us as we speak. We don't have to fall prey to these curses. This does not have to be another case where Lebanon is the country of lost opportunities. We can live to the maximum of our potential. You see, in 10 years, either you buy just another ticket to leave to Dubai, or I and thousands of people like me move back to Beirut. It all depends on the questions you ask and the actions we take today. And I promise, this is an idea worth spreading. Yeah!